Hello, everyone. Welcome to PRPOI's next Saturday session. I'm Sonali Sokal, and I will be moderating this session for you today. It's a very interesting session today. It's a topic we all love. We all live on social media nowadays, and this is a session on how the PR community is going to navigate the influencer and community space. We have three very interesting panelists, and our media partner for this session is AdGully. So I'm going to, without further ado, start adding our panelists and introduce them to you. So hold on. Our first panelist is Pankuri Hari Krishnan. She's the director of Fetch Consulting. Pankuri has about 20 years of experience in events, influencer management, and public relations. And she started Fetch, a digital first agency that excels at curating unique collaborations and bringing together various marketing aspects to create impactful content. Through Fetch, she has worked with a lot of well-known brands such as Grey Goose, Bombay Sapphire, Divars, H&M, the Cannes Film Festival, Blenders Pride, and the France Tourism Board. We're just going to be adding Pankuri to the session right now with us. And welcome, Pankuri.
Hi, so good to chat with you guys today. Very
Yes,
excited about this.
so hold on, I'm just adding the other panelists as well, by and by. Our next panelist is
That's right.
Sumit Thapikar, CEO and founder No Filter Group. Sumit had a vision of creating an intersection between cultures and technology, and that resulted in the creation of the No Filter Group. His venture identifies talent, influencer talent, and passion, incubates them, gives them the resources they need, the space they need, and then watch the magic happen. He pioneered the industry in India and has been successful in integrating social media with e commerce and marketing, introducing various effective business models for the influencer community. Let's welcome Sumedh on the panel. Hi, Sumedh.
Hello.
Thank you for joining
Hi, Sonali.
us. Hi.
My
And
pleasure.
of course, yeah, thank you. And I'm now going to introduce our last and final panelist, but not the least, Jia Singh, who is very lovely and also the founder of Wandering for Wellness. She is a writer. She has written for many digital and print publications for several years now. She works with a lot of wellness startups on content, social media strategy, and website content. She is currently pursuing a health coaching course from IIN in New York and has also enrolled in courses that teach positive psychology and resilience. And of course, we also will be having at the back end joining us our media partner, AdGully. Hi,
Thank
Jia.
you. Hi, thank you so much for having me. Really
Thank you
looking
for
forward
joining us today, guys. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation because you all are people I've seen on social media, admired your Instagram posts, feeds, chatted with you offline and online so many times. And considering that it's very ironical that we are having this session now when our world has gone almost completely digital. So it's been interesting times, and we just love to hear your views on this today. So I'm just going to begin this session this time by asking maybe one question each of you, which is pertaining to today's topic, and then let's hope we have. I'm sure the audience has joined in, and they are going to be also directing a lot of questions at us, which I will keep throwing at you. And we have so let's begin with the first question, which we all want to identify as, and that is, how do you define a content creator and influencer, and how has the definition for this changed and evolved over time? So would you like to start with that, considering that you incubate
Sure.
content?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, we spend a lot of time on trying to understand what the word influencer means because it's been thrown around way more than. I mean, it's lost its initial meaning to form a new meaning, which is not necessarily a bad thing. The way I see it, influencers lie at the intersection of celebrity and media, right? The concept of celebrity is going through a massive shift. Celebrity was this, the word meant a lot of exclusivity. We wanted to know what happened in a person's life, and that's how minute things made a very big difference. Like, what do these guys wear at the airport? What shampoo do these guys use? Ye kaun sa banyan pehante? Like, all these things made a lot of difference to people's life because exclusivity was a very big part of celebrity. Parallelly, the media industry is going through a very big shift where uh, the everything is being integrated in one, right? Earlier studios were different, producers were different, directors were different, and then came the actors, which played a very small no role in the narrative of the writer and director. Now if you look at influencers, they are the whole crew, they run the whole show, right? And influencers sort of lie in this intersection of celebrity and media. It was, I think, it was bound to happen with the internet becoming so widely available, and social media essentially giving power to individuals, right? When there is that amount of democracy in celebrity and media, people choose people. People don't choose brands because inherently people trust people and people don't trust brands because brands want to sell you shit. People, sorry, I didn't mean to curse. I don't know if I can curse here or not. I'm just very used to my Instagram life. So, which gives you context into the authenticity, right? Influencers are very authentic. The more authentic they are, they're rewarded more. Even if there is a hint of people trying to understand, like if their audiences feel like they're playing a character, they lose. The more authentic they are, it doesn't matter if they're flawed, it doesn't matter if they don't fit any standards given by like moral standards, ethical standards, societal standards, which is weird, but authenticity over everything. Even if they make mistakes, it's fine. Yeah, so I think very, very simply, influences like the intersection of celebrity and media. Sonali, I believe your mic's on mute.
Yeah, somebody muted me. Okay. So, Pankuri, I have the next question for you. And that is, how do you, what are your parameters for choosing an influencer? As Sumit so well said, that there are influencers today are everywhere and they are at the cusp of celebrity and media. And we have seen that from micro influencers to mass influencers, there are so many and they have so much content out there. So, how do you choose an influencer? What are your parameters?
So our parameters actually come from what the brands are looking for. That is of utmost importance. But to be honest, I think a lot of, while some brands are quite on top of it, they know exactly what they want. They know exactly how many people they want to reach, what is the kind of person they're looking for. A lot of brands are still fumbling, and especially in the last 4 months of lockdown, we realized that a lot of the new guys have joined the bandwagon who weren't doing digital stuff earlier. There's a lot of confusion, from what they're willing to spend to what do they want out of this particular online piece that they want to do, and eventually who do they want to go with. So that then makes our job that much more tougher. Every time there's a client who wants to do something and that's all they know about it and nothing more, we have to go down from understanding exactly what is the objective, how much are they willing to spend, and then we go backwards and come back with ideas on who they should choose for this. Obviously, there's a lot of back and forth, but again, like Sumit said, that eventually, we will try and marry people in terms of what the brand is trying to say and what the personality of that person is, more or less. So in that space, for instance, if there is something in wellness, then Gia will come to my mind immediately because she's so authentically writes about wellness and well-being, etc. So that's what now, which then basically means that we have to know what a lot of influencers are doing in different genres, be able to connect them back with brands who are looking, because it has become huge. Every day I am learning about so many new influencers who are doing a great job. So the world has really, really opened up, and trying to marry the right brand with the right influencer, I feel, is the key to any digital activation today. Because if you don't get that right, it's like casting for a film. You don't get that right, you can have everything, but it's not going to make that punch. So this is really critical.
Thank you. That's very insightful. And I think one of the most important things that you said was authenticity of content,
Yes.
right? That's the most important thing. So, Jia, that brings me to you. As an influencer, I have watched you grow and evolve over so many years. So, how do you maintain that authenticity or and transparency of content?
So thank you. It's a very difficult question to answer because I think authenticity, like it's very important for us to be authentic, but also the rules with influencer culture and content creation have changed and evolved over time. So for one, I actually look at multiple income sources. I don't put all my eggs into the Instagram basket. So that way, when people come onto my Instagram profile, they look at it mostly as a journal or a space for um, to get to know me a little bit better with a few campaigns thrown in. So not every post or every third or fourth post is a sponsored post or a campaign. And because I've had in the past, pre-COVID, of course, because I've had multiple income sources, I've been able to do that. Whereas there are friends of mine who are in the same industry, who have much larger followings, or even people with the same numbers as me, who rely on Instagram and Facebook alone. So for them, their feeds might look slightly different because they rely very heavily on social media for income sources, to sustain their livelihood, to sustain themselves. So I think a couple of things. One is to understand that what people want to hear from you, why people have come to your page, and also what you're good at, or what you have experience with. So if someone asks me today to talk about fashion, unless it's sustainable, I won't be able to comment on it, which is why most fashion brands don't necessarily come to me. But if someone asks me to talk about cruelty-free beauty, and Sonali, I've worked with you on several of those, or if somebody came to me to do like a hospitality review of a spa, then that's something that I'd be able to talk about because that's something I do at work and outside of work. So I think that in terms of authenticity and relatability is extremely important because ordinarily, whether people follow me on Instagram or not, people come to me for this kind of advice. And so if they come to me anyway for this kind of advice and I have experience in it, it just makes sense for me to stick to that niche as much as possible.
Very, very interesting, Jia. Thank you so much.
Can't hear you.
Sonali, can't hear you. You're on mute.
I unmuted it. Okay, sorry, everyone. I'm technologically not the smartest tool in the shed. You may have figured out. Okay, so I have a question to ask the three of you, and it's a very interesting question considering that the government recently banned TikTok. And Jia, this comes from your mention of influencers having multiple sources of income and not depending necessarily only on their income as an influencer. And Sumit, you are someone who would probably have, perhaps, I don't know if you manage influencers who were on TikTok, but we all realize that while some of us said that okay, TikTok is not a medium we want to work with, a lot of brands didn't want to interact, a lot of them did work very well on TikTok. They had super following on TikTok. I think one girl actually committed suicide after the TikTok ban, if I'm not wrong. So considering that today there are multiple mediums for an influencer to interact on, and we are not sure of government regulations or what medium goes when, how do you how do influencers navigate this space? And Subin, how would you advise an influencer or even the PR community to work in these spaces? Because what do obviously you can't put all your eggs in one basket given the current scenario. So how does one work and how does one navigate this space?
Yeah. So I mean, as far as I know, the timeline on that was the girl committed suicide before the ban. That had nothing to do with the ban. So I mean, that would be if that were the case, it would be a very huge thing. Um, I think so. Primarily, and I can speak from an influencer perspective. I can't speak from a PR perspective because I'm not as deep in the PR world as you might be, Sonali. From an influencer's perspective, what you're essentially doing is trying to tell a story to the world every single day, right? And taking your audience through a journey. So what we've realized throughout the years is the audience sometimes cares more of about your journey than they do about your content. So you could make pieces of content that don't necessarily aren't necessarily the best pieces of your work, but if in a 30-day format, a 90-day format, you're going through a journey of development, the audience loves to see that. Um, and we try to do that as much as we can through um, see what happens is when someone's starting out, there is a lot of struggle, there is a lot of lack of resources, there is a lot of you might not have the best phone, the best lighting situation, nothing like that. But it's very important that you communicate that with your audiences. You communicate with your audiences that, hey, I'm starting from zero, like you're going to watch my journey from zero to now growing up. A lot of people, and me included, are afraid of sharing that vulnerability with their audiences, that, hey, I don't have the best phone, I don't have the best lighting, I don't have the money to go to the gym, right? But unless you do that, unless you show them your rock bottom, they are not going to realize the journey to the top. Now, primarily what an influencer is doing, they're trying to tell their journey from 0 to 1. How they do it is through platforms, right? Various platforms are various types of storytelling mediums. For example, if I were to give you an analogy, Sumedh on this panel is entirely different from Sumedh to his mom, to Sumedh to his sibling, to Sumedh to his best friend, right? To my best friend, I would like make fun of him. I would abuse him 10 times a day. I wouldn't do that to my mom. I'm very respectful to my mom. I would listen to her, right? And here I'm a completely different person. I look at social media exactly like that. You are a very different person on LinkedIn, a very different person on Snapchat, a very different person on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. These are just medium of expressions, right? Um, I think if you look at them that way, it's much better than looking at them like a business tool. Because if you're storytelling natively well on a platform, I think advertisers will find you interesting, and you'll sort of find a way to make money. You just have to be very interesting on that platform natively. And I mean, yeah, the world is unpredictable. TikTok went away. We lost our biggest asset. Like we lost,
Yeah.
I think collectively 120 million followers that night. But we weren't heartbroken because uh, a a lot of why we are where we are is because of TikTok, because TikTok was a growth accelerator, right? It was a completely new platform. Nobody had seen anything like it, to the point that people are afraid of it. People are making fun of it. It gave access to create content to people who never knew what even content was. They didn't have a camera. You no longer needed any tools apart from like a basic $100 phone with an internet connection, and you could become a star overnight. You could showcase your talent. And we also learned that content is subjective, talent is subjective. Whatever people vote in form of likes is what works. And uh, if it is something that is a lip syncing video that people give 5 million likes to, that's democracy. I can't say मुझे नहीं पसंद है, मुझे नहीं पसंद है, ठीक है, but लोगों को पसंद है, 5 million लोगों को पसंद है. And that would make someone's career. That, I mean, someone would be able to monetize off of that 5 million likes. If TikTok goes away, or if Snapchat goes away tomorrow, I do think everyone should have multiple verticals of income. So the day TikTok went away, we had this. I mean, the week TikTok went away, we had this like a platform diversification program for all our influencers, and we also invited influencers across the fraternity. We had about 300 influencers joining in who weren't necessarily on all platforms, and we created like a guideline of, oh, if you're starting YouTube right now, these are guidelines. Do this, and those guidelines weren't repurpose your content. The guidelines were, you were storytelling for 15 seconds yesterday. Today on YouTube, you have to storytell in 10 minutes. So the approach is entirely different. Like there, you could get away with like beginning, middle, and end, and a very short story. But here you have to share about your life. Unless you do that, like unless you are authentic, it doesn't work. And Instagram has an aesthetic feel to it. So that, like if an aesthetic element goes alongside your story, it helps on Instagram because the platform natively prefers that. LinkedIn natively has a stats preference. If you do that, then it helps you on LinkedIn. I do think everyone should try every platform and then it also isn't valuable if you're on 10 platforms at once, because you wouldn't be able to give time to any of them. But yeah, I sometimes honestly don't understand how people do it. I wouldn't be able to do it myself. I see creators of mine posting 5 pieces of content on Instagram every day, 2 pieces of content on YouTube every week, and I'm like, ये मुझसे तो नहीं होएगा, ये बहुत ज़्यादा मेहनत है. Coming up with a new concept, shooting it, editing it, putting it out, and understanding how your audience reacts to it every day is very difficult.
No, but to add to that, Sumit, what I feel in terms of what Sonali asked
Yeah.
was, exactly. I mean, one never thought overnight TikTok is going to vanish. But what we've seen with our content creators and the people we work with is that, people who are in the space of digital storytelling have gone through this evolution for a while now. I know that there have been people who started with blogs, then moved to being very big on Facebook. Suddenly Facebook died, then they went on to Instagram. So I think if they're authentic to their storytelling, if they know where they want to stick, the platform and adapting to that platform comes most naturally to most people. Like I said, initially a lot of people didn't want to do TikTok, but once they got the hang of it, once they understood how it worked, they moved quite quickly and very quickly also got done with it. Apart from those who were obviously only TikTok people, I'm not talking about that. But generally, content creators I've seen who are very, very committed to creating content, doing something interesting on a daily basis. And like Sumit said that, it takes a lot to be able to be on different platforms, keep them engaged, keep new content happening. If you're committed to that, platforms will come, platforms will go now all the more, and everything is digital heavy. We don't know. I mean, we as an agency currently are seeing there are 6 new TikTok kind of things that are happening, right? And that we're working with our creators on that. So platforms will come and go. They will have different formats. We just have to stick to what we do and what we tell and how we tell it uniquely. I think that's most important. I go to a particular content person on her Insta or her YouTube or his videos because I like what he wants to talk about. Platform comes and goes. That's my understanding of how we work with our content.
But I also think that it's easier for influencers to adapt through platforms than it is for brands. For brand, it's incredibly difficult. कि कल तक ये हमने समझ लिया था इसका सब ROI measure करना और आज ये नया आ गया. Like, what do we do now?
TikTok, most brands didn't want to get onto it unless they were really young. The older, I won't say conservative, but the more serious brands were so unwilling to get onto TikTok. And then they saw a couple of other brands jump onto it. And then when we started getting briefs, we had TikTok also somewhere in the middle for a small bit. And I was like, okay, people are sort of jumping onto it now. How now Reels is becoming this one little platform where people are saying, let's see what we can get. Like, I've got a lot of brands saying, put some into it, let's see how it goes. So I think brands, of course, definitely take much longer. And if it's a stark platform like TikTok was, then it's a bigger time that they take to get into the shift. But that's just the way it rolls.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't comment on the national security perspective that the government had because I don't have any insight on it. But just from a platform standpoint, TikTok was an incredible tool for advertisers. Like, it was the new TV because it gave you a sound attached to a video, and nobody scrolled TikTok without sound, which is an incredibly powerful thing, right? And it was because it was just 15 seconds, you would just spend hours on it and not even realize what is happening. We also worked with the TikTok team very deeply on creating ads, and the tools that the app had were insane. Like, they were much better than what other platforms are providing at the time. So, I mean, from my perspective, I don't have any perspective into the national security or any of that, so I can't talk about that. But just from a platform thing, it was incredible. Like, I still miss it every day. If I hope the government brings it back.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, Jaya, which is stemming from what Pankhuri and Sumedha are saying, and that is that how do you look at content diversification across various platforms? It would be very nice to hear your perspective on this.
So I think the most important part is to understand again what your strengths are. And for me, writing comes more naturally than creating content. So in terms of visual, like video or stills, because for me, I can write as a one-man army. I don't need too many people to sort of help me through the process. But with video creation, you often need people to help you shoot/edit, depending on the kind of budget, depending on the kind of stuff. So as far as possible, I try and work on stuff which is location independent, which I can do in the comfort of my own home at my own time, and which I know will come more naturally to me. So therefore, the 2 or 3 most the platforms that I end up using most are my blog, of course, and my Instagram, because I'm tending to use Instagram for longish captions. So I sort of started microblogging on it, because like both Pankari and Sameer mentioned, storytelling is a very integral part of this, and there's a certain amount of reality and vulnerability that's really crucial that has to come out, because if you appear like somebody who has it together all of the time, and if you appear like someone who has this la-di-da perfect life and nothing can touch me, then it's very hard for someone to be able to relate to you, because at the end of the day, we are all human, and irrespective of whether,
unless you're projecting that image only.
But even that, I find, Pankari, it becomes really hard for anyone to sustain, right? Yeah, and so like I don't know what it was, but like a couple of years ago, someone gave me this advice and said, don't be afraid to talk about your struggles. Don't be afraid to talk about your failures or your setbacks, because they will give somebody else either the courage to start up, or they will make someone else feel less alone. So whether it's like entrepreneurial struggles, or how to make money, how to diversify, how to earn passive, like how to look at passive income streams, different ways of like approaching Instagram as an authentic content creator, and talking a little bit about personal stuff perhaps. And so for me, even though I don't have like a bazillion followers on Instagram, I'm really grateful and glad when I get messages or emails or just responses from people saying, hey, I can so totally relate to that. I went through this, when I was transitioning through careers, or when I was ending a really difficult situation, or when I was negotiating with a brand. And so for me, having that conversation or having that added interaction is a huge plus. So I think, I have to admit, I have a lot of respect for TikTokers and people who are primarily on TikTok, because how they did it is wow. I watched some of it, I consumed some of it, and like so many of them were so talented, and I hope it comes back for them, or I hope some app like that comes back. But that being said, I find that I mean, it's not something I'm very good at, so I'm still trying to find ways to stick to areas which still feel a little bit comfortable to me. So I'm probably the person who hasn't jumped onto all platforms yet. I'm sticking to 2 or 3 as much as possible, and I'm trying to spend more time doing video in 2020.
Okay, that's lovely to know, Jaya. So now I have a question to we'll start with you, Pankuri. And what I want to understand is, our world is getting more and more digital. COVID has only accelerated that. How important is it today for a brand to have a mapped out influencer strategy?
Oh, it's been actually very important the last couple of years in any case that we've seen. We've got clients who have strategies per quarter that we work on. But now all the more, so see, when COVID happened and things changed, obviously everything on offline in terms of events, and anything else that needed people to meet was all out, right? And also any other form of advertising, nobody was going out, so no hoardings, TV wasn't getting shot, nothing was happening. So much moved only to the online digital space, right? So while there were some clients, like I said, who are always ahead of the curve, they know how to move it, so they moved a lot of their budgets, or worked around it in a way that we immediately started to roll with online content pieces. Whereas some other clients, sort of were fumbling for the first couple of months, but they've come in and they've said, okay, this is what we need to do. So to give you an example, in the month of end March, the lockdown began. We had 2 very large projects that we were doing offline. So I was doing a very big piece for Doers Whiskey that was an offline, online, both sort of thing, which is anyways the norm today. You do something offline, you connect it to the online space, and you have a bigger buzz in both mediums. So I was doing a big thing with chefs, and it was called the Doers Club. And we were meant to do 4 editions. We did the 3rd one on the 8th of March, after which the 4th one, which I was meant to do in Bangalore, never would happen. We had already budgeted for it, and it was March. It was complicated. What do you do with budgets? All of that. We just seamlessly moved that into a completely online experience. So almost as early as the first week of April, which is when we were all still figuring what to do, I had already started doing a very large online campaign with doers, with chefs, food making at home, simultaneously everybody do food videos, etc., etc. We jumped onto it. The chefs who were meant to do stuff offline with us, we got them to do online cooking, etc., whatever. Some of them had our bottles, etc. And we actually had a huge campaign that we rolled out in all of April with 4 top chefs. So we had Vicky, we had Anita, we had a lot of people who did this for us, and that sort of set the ball rolling for a lot of the other stuff that we did in the coming months. We had an art initiative lined up, which was meant to have happened end of March. It was all set to be done. We immediately moved that online. Took a little bit of a back and forth, because see, when you're choosing people to work with offline, you're looking at what they bring to you in an event space, in their own personal capacity, etc. The minute you move it online, you're also looking at how many followers, what is the engagement, all of that. To marry all of that at that point was very tough. I may have had a great chef offline who has a restaurant, who does amazing work, but they may not be online at all. Now, those were the challenges we faced, but a lot of brands, what I'm trying to say is, jumped very quickly onto, we've got some stuff that we were rolling, let's not shut it because the world is shutting down right now, because people have adapted to being on a different medium far more than they were earlier. So those very early on, we did a huge art project, we did a huge food and alcohol project, and basis after which then we realized that by May, some part of early June, we had a lot more briefs that started coming to us like that, which wasn't the case earlier.
Okay, so basically everything has gone digital right now, and that's what we are also seeing. There's been a huge pivot. I have a very strange question to ask the 3 of you, and that is, I'm going to start with you, Sumit, because I'm sure you get a lot of complaints about it. And we're all guilty of it, is the process of gifting. So I want to understand, there is this whole thing on unboxing and stories, and a lot of brands love to send gifts to influencers. Now, what do you think that pans out for the influencers themselves, and is that a good strategy to follow?
Wow, my views on this might be a little controversial, but I mean, very simply put, see, both parties are to blame for it, right? Brands want to do it more than, say, paying someone to get a campaign done, because it's good to gift your products. People can use your products and then actually review it. But that's a small part of it. The big part of it is they save a lot of money, right? On the other end, influencers love free products. Who doesn't? I would love free moisturizer if I got one, right? But anyone who's taken this job very seriously of being an influencer, and it's a full-time 24/7 365 job, right? And it is a job you can't cut yourself from, because in a traditional job you can cut yourself from the job, come back home and live your own life. This is live your own life on the internet, right? Now suddenly 1 million people are living your life with you, so you can't cut yourself from your job. Anyone who's doing that job very seriously will demand to get paid. Anyone who's doing that job very seriously will say, "मैं तो ये free में नहीं करूँगा," right? Because I'm giving
I agree with you on that. I'm going to cut you on that, and I'm going to move to the person who actually does the job very seriously, and that's Jia. So Jia, what is your thought?
So with all due respect to all the brands, PR and agencies watching, when I started out, I used to get a lot of different packages and products and stuff like that. And I'd be more than happy to post it, on my stories and talk about it and do multiple stories if need be as well. But what also ended up happening is that agencies and brands started doing a lot of mass gifting. So if a brand came in that launched a particular product, instead of sending it to 10 beauty content creators, they would send it to 1,000 people in the country. And what ended up happening is, in my case, sometimes they would send me alcohol, for instance, and I don't mind having it once in a while, but I don't promote like alcohol on my page. So unless it's kombucha. So, so from that standpoint, I just started asking brands that if you want to send me something that you want me to write about, could you send me a message before you send it so that I'm able to do justice and I'm able to tell you whether or not I'd like to promote it on my stories. And in the case that they would say, we're sending you this product and we'd like for you to do like a couple of stories, I'd be sure, okay. But if they'd say, if it wasn't really in my niche and they said we want you to do like a video or something like that, then that wouldn't happen. So I think over the years, the other problem or the other challenge I find is that because of transporting stuff all over the country, our packaging has changed. Our packaging is still changing, but our packaging has changed quite a bit, because in the beginning, when brands were sending stuff directly to content creators and influencers, sometimes the product would leak or break or disintegrate by the time it reached, right? And so as a result of that, to safeguard that, prevent that from happening, brands would often use bubble wrap or plastic or whatever it is. And then there was a backlash that came with that, because obviously we know that so much packaging material is only going to end up in landfills, and therefore it's not good for neither us nor the planet. So I think just as we also are learning what we are able to promote, the brands and the agencies are also doing that. And I have a lot of respect and regard for brands that are adapting to different packaging styles, or at least encouraging the clients that they work with to sort of go more eco, to go kinder towards the environment in terms of the packaging, and to also not mass gift. Because what ends up happening is, you might have one day spike. In my limited experience, you might have a one day spike.
Yeah, I understand.
When
So let's ask Pankuri the same question. Pankuri, how do you balance this fine line between paid influencers and gifting? Like, how do you manage with your brand? That would be very interesting, and I also want to learn that.
So I speak as is, which means I tell my brands and my clients very clearly. See, I've done before I started Fairchat and all of that. I used to run a celebrity management company, which basically means that I'm always on the side of the content creators, the celebrities, the influencers. I always, while I understand brands have certain things that they need to sort of achieve, we always have to look at it from the other perspective, and that my job as the person in between is to always show this to the client, to say, look, this much and no more. This is how much a certain person can do. Also, have you engaged with this person before in a way that you have made them feel good about your brand, for them to even come back and do a certain free thing? All of this I am very open and honest about, right? You want a certain person to come, you want to give them, but 1,000 other brands are already gifting them. Did you engage with this one person on a one-on-one before you ask them for this favor? That's the one question I ask. Because if you haven't, then how are you expecting that person to do this for you? Why? The retort always is, we have a great product. I'm like, so does everybody else. I mean, there are so many great products today. So tell me, why should I as an agency go to this one particular person and say, do this for free? Because this is their bread and butter, number one. Number two, like I said, as a brand, did you do anything before this where they feel slightly more, loving towards your brand to do this for you, right? So I ask very hard questions from brands, and I let them know exactly what is possible, what is not. In fact, Jia, I'm very shocked, and I didn't know, but maybe I live in some bubble, but that people are just sending out gifts without asking you. I mean, that's something, as an agency, we don't allow the brands we work with to do, however big you are. You have to tell me, even if it's a free thing and it's the biggest thing in the universe, please allow me to, and I may be handling 30 influencers. I will email everyone and ask if this is something they would like to do. and this is the product that they're getting, I also am very clear about this is going to 20 other people, or you are one out of 5 chosen people. I think it's very, that is truly on the agency, because I don't expect the brands have bandwidth for it. But we as agents have to be very, very clear with the people we work with. I tell you why, because the brand today will want to use a certain person and be done with them. We as agencies have to work with them all the time. We are a team. So I need to look at these things, and I put everything on the table and I say, okay, listen, this particular gifting, no one's getting paid. For this particular gifting, there are 2 people that the brand is doing that they're doing on their own. I am doing this gifting piece. I'm very, very clear with the influencers I work with, because we can't rely on them. They can't be suddenly coming up with a surprise and not knowing, oh, this one's also doing it, that one. So as much information as I can give them, I give to the influencer, and then I leave them if it's a free thing. You say this is what it is. Even when it's paid, as much as I can tell them, guys, this is a 7 influencer piece, you're one of them, etc., etc. Try and make it as much as you can in that possible way.
So basically, summing up, Pankuri, what you're saying is be discerning and be very mindful of how many influencers you reach out to at a time, and make sure that you ask them before you send them something if they even want to.
I didn't know it existed. I didn't know that you can just send gifts to people and then call them and say, post about it. I'm sorry, we don't do that because we have never gifted in such large
I think that's also, it's a new field, and because it's a new field, people are still learning, and that's why we are hopeful that people will learn something from this session. So Sumit, I'm coming to you because you're doing influencer management, and I want to understand from you, how do you protect the interests of both the influencer and the brand, and why should a brand come through you through an influencer management agency as opposed to directly contacting an influencer? Just decode it for us. Of course, there are lots of people sitting here. So, and this is a new field completely.
Yeah. I mean, let's answer the second question first. Why should a brand not directly work with an influencer versus a management? I think there is a lot of structure that the management adds. There's a lot of discipline that the management adds. A lot of times, I'm sure Pankuri has had this experience where influencers aren't the most structured people. And because they are so creative, it's very difficult to be structured, right? You're dealing with so many different things at once. A management helps because they schedule your work, they structure all of these things, right? They respond to your emails, they are courteous to when it's dealing with brands or any other sort of collaborations. Coming to the first point of how do we protect interests of brands and influencers both? I think it's the same thing, right? You have to create an incredibly engaging piece of work even when it is a branded product. If it is a very fringe piece of work when it is a branded product, the audience doesn't respect you, which means that the audience is not actually going to engage with that piece of content, which is harmful for the brand and for the influencer, because the influencer is losing trust in eyes of their audiences, and the influencer, like the audience, is also losing trust for the brand, right? So I think protecting the interests of both is easy when you're making sure that the piece of content created is, the way I look at it is, if were you going to create this piece of content if a brand wasn't involved? Only then create a piece of content when a brand is involved, right? And for that, it needs to fit into their narratives, right? For example, Jia said that she doesn't like to promote alcohol, and if she gets 10x the amount of value that her current rates are, and she promotes an alcohol product, it would be great in the short term, but in the long term, the audience would be like, you weren't doing this until yesterday. What has happened to you? What changed you? And that would not only be harmful for her, but for the brand also. So I think just creating an authentic piece of content is great. Now, some people also directly attack it by saying, मुझे पैसा मिला है, उसके लिए मैं promote कर रहा हूँ, which also works, by the way. We have these group of influencers called Funcho. Most of their brand integrations are between their YouTube video. They stop the video and say, आज स्पॉन्सर ही आया है, हमें पेट्रोल का पैसा नहीं था तो हमने स्पॉन्सर लेके आए. एंड ऑडियंसेस लव दैट, एंड दे से ओके, सो अब अभी अपस्टॉक्स यूज करो क्योंकि हमने भी अपस्टॉक्स यूज करके पैसा कमाया. And it would be a video about rising petrol prices and how funny it is, right? So that integration is very fun and it's helpful for the both of them. What we do is we try to work very closely with the influencer in terms of what they're comfortable with sharing, right? What kind of products do they want to promote? What kind of products do they not want to promote? Then not only do we have the influencer creating the content, but we have a group of writers that empathize with the influencer and help them when it is a branded piece, because sometimes there are a lot of brand safety guidelines that you have to follow that the influencer might not know of. Yeah, that's all the effort that we put in, and I think we are also
Yeah,
learning. We make mistakes.
yeah. Sonali, to
Okay,
actually,
so
to answer your question
I
exactly,
can't
the
hear you.
reason the brand needs, I'm saying for the same reason that a brand needs a PR agency like us, they also need the influencer agency, because brands cannot be going to all the press people on their own, even if they know them. Similarly, they can't be going to all the influencers, even if they think that I will DM them and I will ask them for their rates and I will do it. It is not that simple. Exactly, I mean, if you do apples to apples in terms of how they need PR agencies to structure the piece for them, to talk to the journalists a certain way, and to get their messaging out. Similarly, with influencers, it's just a different medium. They need someone who understands both the brand as well as the influencers and mediate it in a way that best comes out for the brand and the influencer. As simple as that. And they cannot get
So
away
wonderful.
from that.
Fair enough. So I have another question to ask all three of you, and we're gonna like request you to just give us like a maybe short, concise answer on these ones because we are slowly running short of time. What is the way forward? One, COVID has definitely done a very strong digital business pivot for us, and media is also a lot of media is either shutting down or moving to digital only medium. So obviously, influencer is only going to have more and more wider circle. So, what is the way forward according to you? We start with you, Pankhuri. How do you think this is going to pan out? How are you going to advise your brands in the next couple of months?
So actually, from brands and agency perspective, we've done a lot of thinking. Obviously, there's been so much time to think. I think collaboration is the way forward, Sonali. Um, so as an agency, Fetch was always doing a little bit of PR and a lot of influencers right from the beginning, right?
Yes.
Um, uh, and then that became a lot more influences, a little bit of PR during COVID time. But what I realized was that a lot of my other PR friends or other people who are doing other things wanted to move into doing something with influencers. We collaborated, right? We worked together. They had a brand that needed to do something with influencers. I had the expertise. We worked together. We were able to create something beautiful for both. I think this whole idea of I, me, myself in the larger agency structure, I've always believed it doesn't need to be like that. We can all work with everyone, see what the other person is. So I have certain influencers who we manage, for instance. Um, there's a certain PR agency who needs guidance on how to take forward. We come forward and say, hey, these are the influencers I have right now. Do you want to work with them together? So I think going forward within agencies, because a lot of us are going to shed the old way of working and adopt and adapt new ways, we will need to collaborate and really work together with each other. For brands, on the other side, I feel that they need to be far more. See, they're also learning. Like a lot of the companies are actually setting up digital pieces right now. There are some, of course, the larger companies who had, larger setups. The expectations need to be more real and aligned. Because
Yes. Completely agree with you.
yeah, because they have the pressures, and listen, all of us have pressures on us. They have pressures internally saying numbers dikhao. We have things saying kam paise mein karo. They're all struggling with what we are. But I think all of us need to also be realistic about what can be delivered, right? And again, I don't miss my words with my clients. I tell them as is. I'm like, guys, I'll do this and I'll do a wonderful job for you. But let's be real on this, right? I mean, if because it's so fluid at the moment. Today, I'm planning something. A blogger is going to post something, or influencer. Tomorrow, there's lockdown. For instance,
Yeah.
suddenly something happened. Suddenly China happened. Suddenly something else happened. No views, no engagement. I'm like, yeah, but there is a larger story out there.
Larger
People are
story.
talking about- yeah.
Fair enough. So, Jia, coming to you on this, how are you going to see the next few months pan out, and what would you advise brands who are planning budgets, or now that lockdown is quite eased out and we are seeing life slowly going back to normal? What is your advice to the PR community and brands on?
So a couple of things, and I'll speak for the content creator and for the brand and PR. I think building a rapport and having, because we're so isolated and because we're not meeting people, it is so important to pick up the phone and call the people you're working with and actually have a genuine conversation outside of work. And I can't tell you, I mean, it's, you and I have been friends, Sonali, for many years now, and I think and I think it's really important to have that with the people that you're working with, because like Pankuri said, there's a much larger plan at hand that we have absolutely no control over, and we're only going to go forward together. So that's number one. And I'm really grateful for the agencies and teams and the people that I've met, because we wouldn't be able to do what we are doing without them. That's one. Number two would be for the content creator to diversify a little bit, but also to be honest and transparent with the person that they're working with, to say, so I'll give you an instance on my part. A couple of weeks ago, a brand reached out to me to say, we want you to do 10 videos in 1 month, but my dog got sick. And for me, my dog is my whole life. And so I had to call up the brand and say, I'm really sorry, I'm rushing to hospital every day. It's not possible. I need to postpone it. And they said, we are strict on the timeline, so we haven't signed a contract. Can we go with someone else? And I said, by all means. And I gave them the number. So I think, right now, there are so many things that are happening. We might have people who are sick. We might have people who might be suffering from anxiety. We might have our own health struggles or our own stuff happen to us. So I think if we are able to honestly have a relationship and honestly share with the people that we're working with that this may not work for me right now because of my current scenario, I think it will help us all build a better relationship and also do better work.
Sumit, I'm asking you the same question. What, according to you, is the way forward? What would you advise brands who are coming to you to tie up with influencers?
Yeah, I would like to add to Gia's perspective also, which is everyone has to realize that influencers aren't billboards. They aren't digital ads. They are human beings. The reason influencers work is because they are human beings, and human beings go through a lot more than billboards do. So there is going to be, although there is going to be a lot of variability, it's beautiful, but you have to calculate in some other way that there is going to be variability because we are dealing with humans. A lot of times we are working with makeup brands on a 6-month timeline, but there is on the 4th month an influencer would say, my skin's breaking out, I can't promote this product anymore, I can't harm myself and promote this product just because the brand wants it, right? But I mean, a lot of times brands have been very good to us in terms of giving us leeway ki theek hai, chalega. But before, so when this whole China tension was escalating, we had a lot of long-term contracts with brands, especially electronics, that we were to promote. And the moment one of my influencers had put up a phone company, like a phone promotion, she got tremendous hate. आप चाइना कैसे promote कर सकते हो? ये क्या चल रहा है? You're anti-national, this, that. And so, I mean, that was okay, but there were 4 more posts to go in the next month, right? And we had to have a very difficult conversation with the brand, and the brand wasn't ready to listen because, I mean, they weren't considerate of any of this. They were like, you have committed to this, you have signed a contract, you have to take this, you have to do this. And also, I mean, we make sure that there are fail safes in the contract. We made sure that we cancel the contract. We didn't mind losing money on the post that we had already done. We didn't mind losing on the relationship there, but we couldn't make the influencer do 4 more posts and have their audience like lose all respect for this person, right? Because like Pankaj said, there's a macro, there's a macro picture you can't ignore. I mean,
so basically, guys, what I'm hearing a lot today is content has to be very authentic. You have to be true to yourself. And like anything else, there is a relationship and there is a narrative that you have to operate in. Can we have a quick 1-sentence piece of advice for our viewers from all 3 of you? Pankuri, again, we'll start with you because we are really run out of time now and I have to wrap this session up. So Pankuri, we'll start with you.
So basically, this watch out for this digital space. It is evolving on a daily basis. It's very interesting. I'm learning new things every day. Watch carefully, like Gia saying. Look out for those who are authentic. Follow the people that you think interest you, and you will find your own groove. You will find your own groove of who you want to be in the digital space. I think that's very, very important because I'm getting lost in gazillions of people over there.
Thank you. And you, Jia?
I think I've learned a lot from talking to all of you today. But I think I would have to support what both Sumit and Pankuri have said so far, is that the only way forward is to collaborate. But I think it's very important to have like a mindful partnership where both people are transparent and honest. And also to understand that at the end of the day, the PR person or the agency and us, we are human beings and we have several things that are happening that are outside our control. So just to be mindful and a little bit sensitive about that for both of us,
True.
because I think if we are honest, it'll be much better.
Lovely. Thank you. And Sumit, you?
So I think the world's going through a insane time. Nobody knows what to do anymore. Nobody knows what tomorrow's going to look like. And in a time like this, we always look to people that we trust. And I think people doing PR, influencers, journalists, any like people in the public domain are arbitrators of the trust that they provide in their audience, right? So I think in a very beautiful way, PR and influencers like sort of intersect in the way that they are like trustworthy sources of bringing information to their audiences. I hope that the PR and the influencer world collaborates more and we have a more harmonious future.
So, you know, that's going to happen because synergistic relationships have always existed between media and PR, and I only see that happening between influencers, influencer managing agency, content creators, and PR again. I'm going to let the audience know that there is times when we get a lot of questions in the comment section. So if anybody has further questions to ask Pankuri, Jaya, or Sumit, don't forget to leave your questions for us in the comment section. And then Pankuri, Jaya, and Sumit, they're going to bug you again and ask you to help us with answers for those in case people, you know, because people keep watching our sections again. And a lot of our content is now going to be out there or with our media partner at Gully, who is going to be using a lot of this content for them of this session. I hope everybody was very informed. I've learned a couple of new things today, and I want to thank you, Pankuri, for joining us today, and more power to you and more partnerships to you. And to you, Jia, my dear, thank you for being part of this and helping us understand the influencer's mind. Though technically, I know you are so much more than an influencer. And Sumit, thank you. I think we are all new field, which is influencer management, because obviously protecting the rights of influencers is as important today as protecting the rights of brands, and they all need someone to help them navigate the wild west of social media. I'm just going to check with Tarun if we have any audience questions, and then we might do a quick rapid fire because we have reached the end of our time limit. Any okay, rapid fire it is. We have 3 minutes. So, best collaboration for you, Pankuri, till yet?
For me, in terms of a brand,
Yeah.
Grey Goose. We would do a lot of
Okay,
work
and can
with
we
Grey
catch it on Instagram? Can we catch it on Instagram? Can our viewers see that on Instagram? Some of your collaborations?
Yeah, it's all there on my Fetch page. You will see.
Okay, I think.
Yeah, you'll be able to see a lot of that on our page. Can't hear.
Okay.
Can't hear you,
Great.
Sonali.
Jia, you best collaboration so far, and where can our audience see it?
Several, to be honest, and I'm very grateful.
Okay, I think we're having some internet. Tech issues.
Now we can.
Yeah.
Okay, Jia, I didn't get you. I hope our audience got you. Yeah, now we can.
No, I was going to say several, and you can see most of them on my Instagram.
I think Jia's facing tech issues. So okay, great. Sumit, what about you?
Best brand collab, Amazon.
Best collaboration
Web
so
Store.
far.
Amazon Web Store. Amazon
Something
is
you're
very
really proud
generous to us. They work.
Okay,
with
what
us
did you
on
do
tight
for
enough.
them?
Very good. So we promote all sort of sales that come on Amazon. We work with their shows, and it's the risks that they're willing to take is very high. They're willing to experiment a lot more. They're willing to integrate with the narratives of the influencer, which I love. And being such a big company, taking those risks is very difficult. So I respect them a lot for that.
Okay, nice. So it was really the most informative for me this time. It was the most informative session so far. I hope all three of you had a good time, and I hope our audience has taken back a lot. I have taken back a lot today. So I'm going to sum this session up, and I think most importantly, what I hear is that influencers themselves should stay very authentic to their content, and PR agencies need to start viewing influencers as human beings, and they need to work with collaborators like Panguri or Sumit to make sure that the content that is being sent out is actually something that the brand can and the influencer can create in terms of being meaningful and being authentic, which people believe in and people keep following you. So this is something that we all have learned a lot today, and thanks guys for this lovely session. I think we are almost done here. We have like literally like 30 seconds left. So I'm so this was a really fun session
It
for
was
me
awesome.
also,
It was
because
awesome.
yeah, it was really awesome to see how different new professions, influencer management, which we never realized in Banguri. Nice to know that PR agencies and content agencies are collaborating. An agency like yours can actually collaborate with a PR agency today to create meaningful content. Who thought that this would be possible 5 years ago? So I think now it's time to say goodbye to our audience. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for this lovely session.
Thank you, Sonali. You
Thank you
were
so
wonderful.
much.
You were very well moderated.
Yes,
Very, very
Thank
good
you.
moderator. Thank you.
Thank you.
had a lot of fun.
Bye, guys.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye. See you.
Bye. Bye.